Hello, my friends. Welcome back to your nature career. I'm so excited to have a very special guest on today, Clara Schroeder. I'm going to have her give you some information and background on her, but we have long awaited this conversation all around her background and her work using nature and partnering with nature in her career and what she's up to as an ecotherapist. Um, I'm not going to read through the bio, but I'll have it in the chat or the description for you. Just because I feel like sometimes when we're reading bios, it's very like robotic,
Mm,
but there are a lot
hmm
of credentialings there. But I would love to hear from you, Clara. First of all, so excited to have you here, and we connected over the interweb, which is one of the beautiful things about technology. But yes, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Taylor.
And I would love, like, we'll go into your background a little bit more if you're comfortable with that. But
Mhm.
if you could just give, like, your little elevator pitch on kind of what you do so people can just orient to what you do.
Definitely. So I'm ecotherapist, meaning I work with people in nature. That's the basic of it. And I'm an author now, first time author, and an outdoor guide. So I combine really, basically, I work at the intersection of nature and the outdoors, climate and climate crisis, and mental health. And I do this through different avenues. And so I basically help people reconnect with themselves, reconnect with nature, with each other, improve their life, and also for the benefit of the planet and animals and the wilderness, which I know you're really passionate about as well.
Yes. Oh my gosh. How many of us do want to just like say yes to this work that you're doing? It's so important. And I have probably more of a familiarity just coming from nature connected coaching on what ecotherapy is,
Mhm.
but we'll dive a little bit more into that. And I love this succinct, like I work with people in nature, it's just like very simple. I used to say the same thing. I connect people to nature. It's
Yeah.
simple but profound. So what I want to just dive right into, if you're open
Mhm.
to it, is I love to find like some of our passion stories because those of us who are deeply connected to nature usually started to feel that connection very early on when we were young. So I'm just so curious, like, what were those sparks of
Mhm.
love? Did you have certain love affairs with types of animals or,
Yeah.
in the backyard? Like, tell us about the juicy stuff about the special places in your childhood heart with nature.
I could tell you're really intuitive because you're spot on without knowing the story. So, yeah, I started riding horses when I was 5 years old. So that began a whole love story that is still ongoing. And basically, the way that my parents describe it is I'm from Europe originally, and we were living in France, visiting, holidaying in the UK and England. And they're like, basically, we sat you on a horse for like a little pony tour at a farm, and you never like got off a horse after that. So then I had a whole, I was a competitive equestrian, I had a whole career in it. But basically, since that moment, horses, dogs, animals were just part of my life. And I felt growing up, and I'm sure some people in your audience can relate to this, I felt more attuned, seen, understood by animals than I did humans. And sometimes that's still true today. So that depth of connection with something more than human, and sometimes I refer to the natural world as more than human world, was there really early on. And my mom is really intuitive. We both can kind of intuitively communicate with animals, like through meditation. And so it just kind of like added a whole layer of love, of compassion, of empathy. I know I'm a hypersensitive person, so the horses just got that. And from there, I mean, it really evolved to wanting to protect, not just horses, but mostly wild animals. And so that's the rest of the journey from there. But it started with my passion for horseback riding and horses.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And horses are such, oh man, majestical. I mean, all animals are, but horses hold just such a different spirit, I think. Similar,
Hmm.
I'm just like getting this intuitive hit. It feels very similar to trees for me too, of just like maybe it's the actual physical size, too, of like that
Yeah.
rounded presence. But that I want to just talk the whole freaking podcast about your connection to now because I'm so interested, especially intuitive, we don't have to. We'll definitely have to have like a part two or just connect with this offline too, because a lot of us, like you're saying, are very highly sensitive, and one of the gifts
Hmm.
of that is being in tune, like truly intuitive with plants, animals, earth spirits.
Totally.
And I love that you are just like, not that you couldn't, but you're just claiming that. And I think it took me a
Hmm.
long time to come out about like, yeah, I speak, communicate with plants.
Yeah.
And so I love that that's what I'm pushing for too, is just more of that norm. But
Hmm.
I'm also just, we can touch on this just a little bit. How do, like, when you say you intuitively connect
Hmm.
to animals, what does that look like for you? Because everyone watching is always going to be so fascinated by this stuff,
Mm.
these people. And
Yeah,
it comes across in different ways, right? So for
it
me, like
does.
I actually hear the voices of the
Wow.
plants. But I'm just so curious, like what your experience is with animals.
That's so cool. Yeah, I was gonna ask you how it works for you. So the way that I would describe it is soul to soul communication. So I have to get out of my own head. Like it's really my higher self or my soul self connecting with the animal's soul, which is a huge gift and honor. And I ask for permission. It looks like a meditation, looks like I'm meditating when I'm doing it. And there's different Claire senses. So I know things in my body. Um, Usually the animals are they're so in their bodies because they're in the present moment that I'll just feel things and I know things to be true. I've done it for clients as well. My mom is a professional and a healer at this, but it's really it's just like it's like a whole other world that you enter and the ego, goes away and I mean I could really get into it because when animals pass, I believe their souls continue. So then that's the type of that's the soul, that's that being that you're communicating with.
Mm.
Um, so I've not experienced it with plants, but I can totally see how it would be real for you. And I do believe that, and I'm pretty sure you would too. Everyone has that gift. It's just been trained out of us because society says it's wrong or it's not, it's weird but it's kind of like reclaiming your own inner witch or whatever you want to call it. It's that. It's a sense that we all have, that intuitive sense, that gut knowing. A lot of moms have it for their children, and you
Mhm.
can have it with animals as well and plants.
I love it. We won't spiral into this, but just a
Yeah, yeah.
thing. Have we connected on human design at all?
I think you know a lot more about it than I do.
Okay, yeah. So just a really fun fact about human design is plants and animals have their own human design. And
Wow.
so what I've learned is that some of us, like you and I, we can have different gates or pieces in our chart that
Mm.
connect and link up with plants or animals. So it totally makes sense as like you probably have the one that connects to the animals, and then I have something that connects to the plants. And it's just so fascinating, all of this.
That's really cool. Hmm.
And I love that you're saying that about the intuitive side. I often talk about just like the witch wounds and things.
Yeah.
When we're talking about just reclaiming our intuition when we step into this work is so important because I mean, the first time I told somebody that a tree spoke to me, I thought
Hmm.
like I was going to, people are going to be like, wow. And then I started to realize there are so many other people out there that have this gift, and I do too
Mm.
believe that too. So anyway, we'll definitely have to do about this because it's so good. This is like the good juicy stuff and why, living is so amazing.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so you found this beautiful connection really young when you were 5 with these amazing horse or horses, and that just sparked your love affair, right? And that
Hmm.
deep knowing. Um, just curious, like what was your path as you started to kind of narrow into knowing that you wanted to go into ecotherapy? Did you have different ways?
Yeah.
A lot of us
Yeah.
are in like a past life, if you will, before we get to where we are now.
Yeah, so it was non-linear for sure as these types of careers go. I had a life-changing, I talk about this in the introduction of my book. I had a life-changing encounter when I graduated high school. So I was all set to go to university. My parents are high achieving family, high achieving, other high achievers. So I was going to I wanted to do business management in my undergrad to go work in the environmental nonprofit world.
Mm.
That was pretty clear to me. Then I was so lucky and blessed to swim with wild dolphins,
Oh my
wild
God.
bottlenose dolphins. Yeah. Like trip of a lifetime. And that totally, like I was already a nature and animal lover by that time, but that really fired up my desire to protect these wild animals and these wild beings. And from there, it's such a long story that I'm going to try to
Yeah, yeah.
condense in a few minutes, but I did go to that business school, hated it, dropped out of college, like did this whole spiritual awakening journey, volunteering, traveling, eventually went back to school for environmental conservation.
Mm.
So I kind of like, I went through dark night of the soul, clinical depression. I was 18, 19. And that also sparked my interest in psychology and therapy. So I went back, I transferred universities. I loved wildlife conservation, environmental restoration, worked in that world a little bit. It did like land management and took kids on hikes.
Mm.
And then I was graduating and realizing I didn't want to go into a technical field, like an environmental restoration field, which I live in Northern California, so that's a big thing here
Mm.
because I felt like basically what had happened is people would just come to me and sit next to me in class because my energy felt calm or I felt grounded to them and they would just talk to me and I loved it. And so it was this whole awakening of like, well, why don't I start to heal the gap between people and the earth? Like that's what I became interested in. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. I took a whole other year to work. I worked at REI. I did, just continued my exploration of the outdoors. And then I found and learned about ecotherapy. And so I pursued a degree in clinical psychology and spirituality, which was really
Mm.
kind of rare. And they let me, it was in the East Coast at Columbia, they let me study and specialize in ecotherapy as like my research. And from there, after that, I became a certified life coach and a certified professional ecotherapist, which was a whole, like another 6 to 12 months of training because I couldn't just school was great and it's important when you're in psychology and you need the foundations, but ecotherapy is a new as a field. And so you need to go find mentors and find other people who are practicing and learning it, and then so you can apply it. And I chose to go the non-clinical route through coaching.
Mm.
So I'm not a licensed therapist, so ecotherapy is misleading, but it combines either you can be a licensed mental health practitioner or a life coach and choose which audience you want to work with. So that's kind of the roundabout way went through some difficult moments in my life. And one of the big reasons I was so depressed in my first university is because it was in the Silicon Valley, and
Mm.
there's so little nature there. And I just didn't think about that as a 16-year-old applying to college.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh yeah, of course it makes sense.
Oh
Like,
yeah. And
yeah.
it was built on, I mean, the school I found out later, it was built on sacred Native American burial grounds that had
Mm.
been, destroyed and built over, which as again, highly sensitive person, you would feel that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That. Oh my gosh. Well, and it's so interesting too, like even through your nonlinear path, you kind of did always have, it sounds like, that thread of nature in some way, shape, or
Mhm.
form. And then amazing to see like how you kind of made it to what I would assume like feels right,
Mhm.
in your system, in the work that you're doing. Would you agree? Like, I don't want to put those words,
Yeah,
but would you agree that you feel aligned in this space?
I do. Yeah. And it's a hard path. And I still, to be totally transparent, I still question it. Like I know that's my soul calling, and I've been lucky that I've gotten to pursue it so young I started in my mid-20s basically. Um, do I know for sure that I'm going to be doing it full time for the rest of my career? No, I don't. But because being a solo entrepreneur is hard and like the world that we live in is a bit crazy. So is it always going to be a driving factor? Yes. Am I like I'm also deeply spiritual, so I that's a vow that I've committed. It's I'm committed to serving wilderness, wildlife, people.
Mm.
Um, as a career, I longevity wise, I don't know. Like I'm writing a book that's bringing in a lot of opportunities and new connections. But it's also an evolving field. So I think as earth helpers and healers, we respond to what's happening, what's needed in the world. So I'm
Beautiful.
kind of going with that flow as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so beautifully said. And I think that that's a piece that I'm personally working with too, and a shift that I've seen recently in this work because been doing it for 6 years, but
Hmm.
it feels like in this last year it's shifted into more of a calling for sure.
Yeah.
And um but I feel so certain about like where my business is at right now as far as really helping, people like you and me and people who are in this to really build that resiliency to stay in this long
Yeah.
term. But it's a really interesting point you bring up is like what this work looks like may shift, but our like
Hmm.
foundation is never, it won't waver. You know what I mean?
I agree.
hmm
Hmm.
Yeah, so I think that's really beautiful for, people who are listening to that to remember. I think a lot of times we can get stuck in thinking it has to look a certain way, or
Hmm.
like, especially if we're going into a career shift. I've seen a lot of like my clients, maybe you've seen this too, is like trying to just spend so much time making sure this next shift is like going to be the lasting permanent one. And while it's an important shift, when you're looking to move careers, it's also remembering like everything is always changing,
Yeah.
everything is always flowing. And especially when you tap into your gifts as an empathic, person connected to nature, it is really like a partnership with the universe of
Hmm.
saying, where next. And that I don't know if that's kind of what you're speaking to in the challenges, but that's been a big challenge for me in the entrepreneur space is like I've never once in the 6 years felt like I know what I'm doing. And like
I
and I'm
agree.
grounded. Like I feel like
Hmm.
I'm always like a little bit blowing in the wind. I feel unsettling for sure.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I just love how you bring all of these aspects in and so beautifully said. I'm just going to look at my little notes here on my questions real quick because I can't double do it. Um,
Well, while you do that, I was just going to respond that I
yeah.
think flexibility and adaptability are like such strengths when we talk about resilience. And like that's one of the key components of building mental and emotional resilience is being able to adapt to new situations, staying flexible, staying open-minded with what that might look like. And it could literally apply to your career. And
Mhm.
and then it's that question of like is there your calling and the career, are they the same? How do you bring them together? Do you want to do that? I've done that. I love that. And I'm like, maybe I won't, maybe they might be two different things at some point. But the
Mhm.
calling will always remain. And that's just almost like that becomes more of an embodiment practice on not just a job, right? And I'm sure you feel that way too. It's
Mhm.
like just the way that we live our lives.
Exactly, exactly. It's very much, it reminds me of what I have been talking to people who are interested in learning herbalism from me. It's
Hmm.
I'm like, this is an actual lifestyle. Like this
Yeah.
is not really a hobby. Like it is, I do really feel like you're a steward, you're working with the earth.
Hmm.
Like you're stepping into saying yes to this work that is way more than just making medicine. That's a really cool
Hmm.
aspect of it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like this, it's co-creation. I mean, that's what we're doing
Mhm.
in this, and it's not entirely just led by us.
Totally. Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, so I know about ecotherapy, and kind of what that is, but can you help to just explain a little bit about how that looks different than like traditional therapy or coaching?
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. So ecotherapy can literally mean taking your coaching practice or your therapy practice outside. I would just caution people that you have to be trained in this before just taking a hike with your patient or your client. That's dangerous. But once, it's not hard to get trained in it. So the idea is that, and you were just talking about co-creation, basically nature becomes my co-guide, my co-therapist, my co-coach when I'm out there. And so it can literally look like a hike. It doesn't have to be in person and outside. I work with clients all over the world, sometimes virtually. And basically, when I say co-therapist with nature, when you're doing coaching, there's an internal process happening for your client. And you're kind of helping steward that. You're helping the reflections and the, realizations. And with nature, it's like that there's a mirroring that happens and talk about animal spirit guides. There's also animals that are just there. And so then it's about, I'm basically like, I always think of myself as a messenger or as a translator, never as like the guide, because that's nature's job. And she does it so beautifully. I'm just over here kind of like, so I mean, one example, someone could be talking about their diseased grandfather, and all of a sudden, through the trees, you're in the forest, the sun comes out and like literally shines at the client through the trees. And I'm like, hey, did you notice when you were talking about your grandfather, the sun came out and through? And they're like, oh yeah, that's my grandfather. Like, and so then I'm like, okay. And then, then there's a conversation. So now you're bringing in ancestors, or um, a client could be, this happens all the time with birds. They're so cool. A client usually talking about a future direction. There will be a bird that flies overhead, and I'm like, hey, did you see that hawk? Like right when you're talking about X. And they're like, huh. And I'm like, okay, so what, if the hawk had a message for you, what would it want you to know? Or so that's like that version of it. Ecotherapy virtually, I literally have a client who will sit facing her garden, and I'll guide a meditation, and she keeps her eyes open, and it's just about connecting with the land, connecting with the spirit of the land, the animals, the stewardship that you're talking about. It can look many different ways, but at the end of the day, and by the way, I do ecotherapy on myself all the time. Like, but it's about really being present. So there's nothing wrong with exercising and excuse me. We're still recovering.
I know that.
um Plant helpers here on my tea. um what was I saying? So outdoor recreation is beautiful and is important, and that deepening of the connection happens more through slower walking and no, distractions as far as music in your ears, or you might not be having a really lively, dramatic conversation with a friend. It's really about like taking yourself out on the land, maybe solo, maybe not if you're not comfortable with it, and connecting more deeply, like feeling the energy, looking around, thinking about who were the caretakers of this land, like whose land are we on? Land acknowledgement is a huge part, referring to the Native American tribes that were there and all of that. It's a big meaningful field that extends beyond just therapy. It for me, it brings in social justice, it brings in environmental justice and all of that.
I love that. Yeah, and how expansive it is. It sounds I mean, it has to be very familiar to um, what I did through my nature connected coaching. It's very
Mhm.
similar. There's one like client session where that stands out to me too, where um, the client was like having just like a moment where he was thinking through like, is this the path for me, career wise?
Mhm.
And it was like he came up to this tree that had a split. And
Oh,
like you or I, as support in that, just see the tree, but he's like, oh my gosh, this is so profound. He's like, that side is like dying and dead, and then this other side has new growth. And it's just what I like to say a lot too in the nature world, in the environmental space is we try to like analyze and logicalize
yes.
everything. And this work that you're doing is, to me, it's so much more of just the felt sense and how
Yeah.
profound that can be. And so it's kind of inexplainable, but it's extremely profound for the people who are working with you. Um,
Hmm.
and in so many more ways. That's exactly how I feel when I work with on the herbalist stuff. I'm like, yes, your work, or even just like composting. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm composting now, but like it's connecting me to slowing
Hmm.
down in my life. It's connecting me to seeing my impact in the world, of
Yeah.
seeing how nature, like, I mean, it's just like it's never ending when you start to do this work in creation with nature. So that's so
Hmm.
amazing. And then by the way, you guys, you have got to follow Clara and understand and watch like some of these places where she takes her clients, because you do retreats too.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh. I was
Hmm.
like, how can I get signed up for one of these
Yay!
retreats?
Going to California.
Oh my gosh, they are stunning. And it looks like are you like camping like in this cabin and you're
Yeah.
more
So
about that? So
that's the yeah, 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 that's my outdoor guiding
okay, okay.
role. So I'm so lucky that I work for the University of California, San Francisco, which is a really big medical institution. So like it's a medical school. They have all kinds of hospitals over the San Francisco Bay Area. And basically there's an outdoor recreation program, which it's called outdoor rec, but really it's outdoor mental health that we're talking about, which as an ecotherapist is right up my alley. And so I get to take basically stressed out medical students or medical professionals like nurses and doctors and surgeons out on the land. And I mean, covertly, I'm doing ecotherapy. I don't call it that, but I will invite, so oftentimes the nurses are super cool and down to do the meditations and stuff. But basically, yeah, I take them camping, hiking, kayaking. Um, and that's really helped me take my work talking about career. So I have a private coaching business essentially because I am an ecotherapist and a life coach, and that's great. And I do retreats through that. But this is a population that hasn't been exposed to everything that we're talking about.
Mm.
So it's, people who I've had people who've never camped before. I've had people who don't want to walk up a hill, or like who just weren't exposed to the outdoors or to nature, and that's been really rewarding. It's a different kind of impact. And the program, I'm not the manager or anything, but it keeps growing, and we're seeing just a real need and people turning more and more towards nature, which is so beautiful.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I'm basically an outdoor guide through that, and we'll see where it continues.
That's incredible and so cool to see how you have these different pieces. And then we'll talk about your book too, like
Hmm.
bringing in these different, I mean, also I really love to bring in too the very much heady part of this, and the very masculine side is like we
Right.
are also doing these as careers. And so it's like
Yeah.
looking at kind of like diversifying your income streams as well. And having just a different audience to work with, which can bring up rewards and challenges. And um, to kind of start rounding out some of this, I'm
Mhm.
curious too, like, what were a few just like, I don't know, or maybe just even one of your biggest challenges that you've kind of had to face doing this work, and stepping into these pathways, I guess.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that I mean, this is true for any solo entrepreneur. The uncertainty in the beginning. So I've had my business for almost 3 years, and I was on medical leave for a year and a half of that. So it's really only been a year and a half. And that's talking about diversifying income streams. That's super important because with this kind of practice and private practice, there's no guarantee,
Mhm.
and it's up to you to go find the clients, and tying it back to ecotherapy or just nature healing in general. I feel like, and tell me if you feel the same way, it's like we're like shifting the paradigm. Like we are like you're always gonna be one of my mentors basically said, it's like you're trying to fight inertia. And I
Mhm.
really like that metaphor because as you know, I got really sick last week. And so my mentor texted me, he said, I think it's because you've been putting out so much
Mhm.
but like you're against inertia. Like this is not the norm. We're literally evolving, and it's a crazy time for as a collective in general. So it's like, how do you not burn out? How do
Mhm.
you take care of yourself? Which I know is all things that you're really good at, like helping people with. And face that uncertainty, that instability of like, I don't really know. I don't have income stream predictions the way that some people in a corporate job might. And I literally help people with corporate jobs who are miserable.
Mhm.
So do I want that? I mean, I'm not saying everyone in a corporate job is miserable at all, but it's a choice.
Mhm.
And it's about knowing when that's right for you and for how long. And again, being open to shifting. I didn't know. So my medical issue was a traumatic brain injury. So
Mm.
that was like life changing. So lucky, so miracle that I'm still here and yeah, alive and healthy. And coming out of that, I was like, yeah, being an outdoor guide sounds like the perfect job right now, the perfect side gig,
Mhm.
because it's literally like getting a second chance at life. And so then I wrote the book, and but I didn't know that was coming. But it's all tied back to my original path of I'm an ecotherapist. I
Mhm.
help people reconnect with nature. So I don't know if that was not a super succinct answer, but
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, because I think it's really important coming out of the nature connected coaching program. I just saw, and this is saying it in like a very loving way, but this is also why I was like, I really want to help people stay in this game because I saw and I see people traditionally in this space of being massively capable, but either burning out and getting out of this game or not being able to make it financially viable.
totally.
And it's just those real conversations that I think that I'm sure you probably do when you talk to people who are just interested in what you do, because I see this a lot, is people are really eager to get out of their corporate jobs
Hmm.
and, jumping head first and, also coaching people in the corporate space. Like
Yeah.
there is like, it would be very challenging to just like, there are like, it is like choose your hard, right?
Yes.
So I always just advise people like, make sure you financially have like some nest egg,
Hmm.
um, and we won't go into all of that, but it's
Hmm.
refreshing to hear like, yeah, it's challenging and to diversify, some of those income streams for multiple reasons,
Totally.
and to manage the burnout as well. So I know that one of the main reasons I wanted to chat with you about is this incredible book that you have coming out. So if you'll just give us like what prompted that,
Hmm.
and maybe just a little preview about what people can expect from your book. And
Sure.
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So what prompted that? I think a big part of it was my traumatic brain injury and the year and a half it took me. It happened when I was 26,
Mm.
to recover. And so it coming out of that sort of trauma, I felt like I wanted more to have more impact. I was being given a second chance, basically, to continue on this planet at this time. And talking about being an entrepreneur and a brand and becoming and I would call myself an emerging thought leader. I'm like still early in my career. I'm not an expert in anything, but I have acquired some skills and some knowledge and wisdom that I feel like I'm just honestly channeling most of the time.
Mhm.
um and so just wanting these tools that we're talking about that you use all the time and you also preach to be a response and the medicine to the crisis of in the world. So by crises, I mean climate and mental health. So the book is called Renature. So like re-dash nature because of the nature reconnection. And the subtitle is A Path to Healing Yourself and Our Planet. And
Mhm.
it's this idea that the more we individually connect with nature, with animals, with the natural world beyond ourselves through internal work, really, because that's how, it's not just going for a hike, it's doing so mindfully, for example. the more, people are going to start caring more and turning towards pro-sustainable, pro-environmental behaviors. So the book was originally supposed to be called The Ripple Effect, something like, healing yourself, healing the planet. And then there was a whole title switch up, and he's part of the author journey because somebody published that. So cool that she did. But I was like 2 weeks away from turning in my manuscript going, oh my gosh, what the heck? So that was fun. Yeah,
Oh
just
my
big girl
God.
here. Right after Thanksgiving, I'll always remember Thanksgiving holidays. So Renature is about it's really like the last 5 years of my life. So it's all the research I did in my grad school, all the anecdotes and what I've learned from my clients, what I've learned as an outdoor guide. And it goes back, so it traces back how we became disconnected, like how we even got to this problem, this lack of balance, this lack of interconnectedness, which is always like we're always connected. We just live in a society that you know, doesn't live that way at
Yeah.
all. And so it's about, historically what happened, scientifically what does it look like? And then like where do we go from here? Like the whole argument is that the more we realize and we cultivate our own well-being, not only is it going to help everyone around us in our immediate family, friends, coworkers, community, like everyone benefits the more you focus on your own well-being and not in a selfish way, but in a like proactive, I'm going to make the world better kind of way.
Mhm.
Then we go and then we look at, okay, well, how does that actually help planetary health? Like, how do we promote that? How do we, um, I would say I'm not, I was going to say treat animals better, but that's not a huge focus of the book. But I have the last chapter is literally called Loving Well. Like, how do you bring compassion and love to all beings
Mhm.
in a way that's not just, your dog or your cat. It's like it's a real way of, like we were saying, it's a way of moving in the world that's different. So it's like a practical book, but it's also like, how do we get here? Like, I'm a very intellectual person and I love the research and the data, and I'm trying to reach a wider audience. So it's for people who love nature, who are interested in psychology, who are interested in self-help. A lot of stories are personal to me as well, woven in there. So hopefully it's available for pre-order for another 10 days, and then it'll be out in the fall in September, October 2025. And I
Amazing.
have a special little thing for your listeners, actually.
Okay.
So if they wanted to pre-order the book, they can go to my website and type in Nature Career, all caps, and get a 15% discount on the pre-order. So I just thought I would throw that in there for all the earth lovers.
Amazing. Yes. And congratulations. Like for those who don't know, like writing a book is a really big deal. Like it's a I am
You've done it,
not trying
yeah.
to I'm not seriously not trying to like upshadow you because I hate when people are like, "Oh yeah, when I wrote my book," but I'm like
Mhm.
I really did not have an appreciation until I really went through that process. So I really am saying this like I know your work is going to be incredible, and we all buy books all the time. So I highly recommend, like, this would be a book that I can guarantee. I mean, just in this beautiful 45 minutes that we've been chatting, you can see what a beautiful soul that Clara is. And I don't know, just investing in the things that we want, the environment, the society, the people who we want to see. This is one beautiful way to really support, not just by purchasing, but by reading and really listening to the words of wisdom that she has. So thank you for sharing that beautiful gift. And congratulations. You're not there yet,
Thank
but
you.
you're
No.
close.
Yes, it's happening. It's a crazy journey in and of itself, writing a book. I totally agree.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. So can I leave with one final question?
Mhm.
Um, just for those who are maybe out there who are lovers of nature, similar to you and I, who feel a little bit of a pull, maybe in one direction or the other, like what would your words of wisdom and kind of like doesn't have to be like super profound, but like what would you like to say to them as like maybe some advice or something to focus on?
So by poll, what like you meaning like career wise or?
Yeah, like I'm feeling I'm I was
Mm.
I'm such a feeling person, so I'm always
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
like the nature pull to like do more, do this for,
Mm,
go into this work, like join our kind of movement type of thing.
beautiful. Yeah, it's a great question. Um, I would really encourage people to listen to that calling. It's like really listen to your heart because I feel like life purpose and soul purpose, whatever you want to call it, is that guiding force. I know it's been my guiding force, and everyone that I come across who in some way is honoring that in themselves and in their lives is happier.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean, like we were saying, that's probably my biggest advice. And maybe that's not what people want to hear, but don't drop everything and just go do something you've never tried before and become professional at it overnight and charge for it. Like going from I have a pull, I love this stuff, I want to be, I'm an earth healer, like I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. And
Mhm.
like we need more of that. We need your light. And it's about like from there, maybe it starts with volunteering or maybe you have a group, like maybe you bring your friends and you do something different and weird on the land, like meditating, or like go hug a tree. I don't know. But then you just build from there and see like what you love, because it's such a big field. Like you work really closely with plants, which is beautiful and important. And there's people who work really closely with animals, and there's the mental health practitioners, and literally the like trail restoration crews. There's so much. So it's about having an idea of what fits for you, giving it like dipping your toe, and then if it feels right, continue. Like I feel like life will support you
Yes.
once you lean in. I just wouldn't like jump off the cliff and go like dive. That's kind of my advice.
Yeah. There's definitely a collaboration in our future together because I, you and we would be unstoppable. Totally. I love that so much. And I truly am like saying this from the bottom of my heart. I really am glad that we met
Me
and that I
too.
came across your profile and that we've connected. And I'm just excited for the work that you're doing, the light that you're being and bringing into this, and the work that you're doing is so important. And um, I know you're on Instagram, so I'll link all of the things in the show notes that so that you can follow along. Your website and then Instagram, is that where you're mostly on?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect.
And
And then we'll
LinkedIn if people are in the corporate world and want to see
LinkedIn.
that.
Okay.
I'm a pretty big right now on LinkedIn, yeah. Well, big. I'm trying to be bigger. Let's just put it that way. We're not pretending to be anyone here.
I love it. No, we got to stand in that as like future self. Like,
Yes, yes.
and watch out. I'm holding that with you too. Totally. So we'll link all of the things, but thank you for sharing your story with us and with the listeners. If you guys have any questions or anything for either one of us, feel free to drop them below. Truly, honestly, like that's what I'm falling so in love with in this space is it just feels like there's more than enough room for all of us to succeed and expand and really help the planet and the more the merrier. So thanks so much for being here with us today, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Taylor. That was
Thank
amazing.
you.
Keep shining.
You too.